Go figure. So we're going to end the broadcast today with some NBA scores and some NHL scores and some uh, Major League Baseball scores. We will start with the NBA scores. And for today, we only have two games to be concerned with. We have the San Antonio Spurs taking on the Dallas Mavericks. That will be going on today at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And we have the Denver Nuggets taking on the Golden State Warriors tonight at 10:30. And I will take a look at the future cast. We have a lot of games coming up tomorrow. A lot of games coming up Friday night. The Knicks will be in Toronto playing the Raptors at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. The Charlotte Bobcats will be in Boston taking on the Celtics at 7:30. The Atlanta Hawks will be taking on the Brooklyn Nets at 7:30, which is important. Both that game and the Knicks game for the Knicks obviously are quite important. As a Knicks fan, I am concerned. The Atlanta Hawks will be taking on the Brooklyn Nets at the Barclays Center. The Philadelphia 76ers will be taking on the Memphis Grizzlies. That'll be at 8 o'clock. The Houston Rockets taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Phoenix Suns taking on the San Antonio Spurs at 8:30. The Golden State Warriors will be taking on the Los Angeles Lakers at 10:30 p.m. The Washington Wizards will be taking on the Orlando Magic at 7 o'clock p.m. The Indiana Pacers will be taking on the Miami Heat at 7:30 p.m. That's going to be an incredible game of the top two seeds in the Eastern Conference. The New Orleans Pelicans will be taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. The Detroit Pistons will be taking on the Chicago Bulls at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. The Cleveland Cavaliers will be taking on the Milwaukee Bucks at 8:30 p.m. And the Portland Trail Blazers will be taking on the Utah Jazz at 9 o'clock p.m. Now moving on to MLB scores, and I'm just going to get this all updated properly, and hopefully you all can hear the sound of my voice as I update for something later on. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. Now, going on to our Major League Baseball scores. This is kind of difficult when you're just doing it by yourself trying to do sports scores. Nevertheless, Major League Baseball going on right now. The Oakland Athletics earlier today defeated the Minnesota Twins in Minnesota by a score of 6-1. The Miami Marlins lost in Washington to the Nationals, that's Washington, D.C., by a score of 7-1. Top of the second inning right now, the Milwaukee Brewers are losing to the Philadelphia Phillies 1-0. The Pirates earlier today, Pittsburgh Pirates, defeated the Chicago Cubs in Chicago by a score of 5-4. Right now, perhaps the greatest rivalry in all of sports, the Boston Red Sox are taking on the New York Yankees. We are scoreless at the top of the second. And the Houston Astros are in Toronto to take on the Blue Jays, and we are scoreless in the top of the second. And tomorrow, I'll give you an update for the games for tomorrow evening. The Boston Red Sox will be taking on the New York Yankees at Yankee Stadium at 7:05 p.m. The Miami Marlins will be taking on the Philadelphia Phillies at 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time, all times. The Washington, D.C. Washington Nationals will be taking on the Atlanta Braves. The Cleveland Indians will be taking on the Chicago White Sox. The Pittsburgh Pirates will be taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. And those last two games were at 8:10 p.m. each. At 9:40 p.m. Eastern Time, the Los Angeles Dodgers are taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. At 10:10 p.m., the Detroit Tigers will be taking on the San Diego Padres. At 10:15 p.m., the Colorado Rockies will be taking on the San Francisco Giants. At 7:05 p.m., the Toronto Blue Jays will be taking on the Baltimore Orioles. At 7:10 p.m., the Tampa Bay Rays will be taking on the Cleveland Reds. At 8:05 p.m., the Houston Astros will be taking on the Texas Rangers. 8:10 p.m., Kansas City Royals against the Minnesota Twins. 8:15 p.m., Chicago Cubs taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. 10:05 p.m., the New York Mets taking on the Angels of Anaheim. And lastly, the Oakland Athletics will be taking on the Seattle Mariners at 10:10 p.m. And the last thing before we go off the air, as a tribute to Pete, who is not here, and for the record, I will say I'm a big hockey fan myself. I do enjoy hockey. It's a very fast-paced sport. For those of you who are not into it, I do recommend getting into it. It may look weird at first, but it really is an exciting, hard-hitting, and relatively fast-paced sport. Hockey games normally don't take that long. You know, a 20-minute period, while it seems maybe long, actually goes by pretty quick because there aren't a lot of long breaks. So it's a very good sport to get into. Right now, the Buffalo Sabres are taking on the New York Rangers, and we are in the first period live, and I believe it's actually about to start, and we are scoreless. the New Jersey Devils are taking on the Ottawa Senators, and there is 15 minutes and 27 seconds to go in the first period. We are scoreless. Currently, the Philadelphia Flyers are losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning by a score of 1-0 with about 16 minutes to go in the first period. The Washington Capitals are winning against, right now, the Carolina Hurricanes by a score of 1-0 with we are live. I don't know, this doesn't say the time, but they're leading by 1-0 in the first period. The New York Islanders are leading the Montreal Canadiens. Or, pardon me, they're not leading the Canadiens. They are scoreless, although we are live with 16 minutes and 10 seconds left in the first period. And we are scoreless with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers, 0-0 with 16 minutes, 16 seconds to go in the first period. And for tomorrow's games, we have the Chicago Blackhawks taking on the Washington Capitals at 7 o'clock p.m. We have the New York Islanders taking on the New Jersey Devils at 7:30 p.m., all Eastern Time. The St. Louis Blues taking on the Dallas Stars at 8:30 p.m. The Colorado Avalanche taking on the San Jose Sharks at 10 o'clock p.m. The Carolina Hurricanes taking on the Detroit Red Wings at 7:30 p.m. The Columbus Blue Jackets taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning at 7:30 p.m. And last, the Winnipeg Jets taking on the Calgary Flames at 9 o'clock p.m. And that, of course, was your NBA, MLB, and NHL updates for today and tomorrow. As far as the NBA goes, I will just say briefly that as a Knicks fan, I have to say I am completely baffled by the fact that, statistically speaking, if I am correct, they can statistically still make the playoffs. The simplest way it can be done is if Atlanta continues to lose and if New York continues to win, the New York Knicks actually have a shot at making the playoffs. As I quipped to my father a couple of days ago, I said to my dad, you know, it's amazing how this late in the season, the New York Knicks are still playing meaningful basketball. I didn't say they were playing good basketball, but they are playing meaningful basketball solely in the sense of, much like the New York Jets during football season this past 2013-2014 season, everyone thought the New York Jets were going to be this horrible team. Okay? Everyone thought they were just going to be this horrendous excuse, pitiful excuse for a football team, and the New York Giants were going to dominate. And in a way, I don't want to say it was completely the other way around, but the New York Jets went, I believe, 8-8 at a certain point after 16 games. No, I'm sorry, that can't be right. Well, I think they finished 8-8, pardon me, but it was basically at a point where they were alternating wins and losses. So they were doing much better than the New York Giants were, and it wasn't until I think the last 2 games of the season this year that the New York Jets were in a position where they couldn't make the playoffs, so what they were playing, the games they were playing were totally meaningless. Everyone thought they'd be out after the first 4 or 5 weeks, that there'd just be no shot. And I find the New York Knicks are, to an extent, in a similar position. They've had to play more games, obviously, than the Jets. However, here we are with only, I think, 4 games left in the regular season, and we're still talking about the New York Knicks could potentially make the playoffs. Now, granted, they're going to get probably an 8 or 7 seed if they do make it, in which case you'll either have to deal with the Miami Heat or the Indiana Pacers, which is kind of like saying which circle of hell do you want to go into, the 8th or the 9th. But nevertheless, it's going to be a very interesting next couple of games, and let's see what happens. So that's going to wrap it up for us this week on Full Metal Attack. Next week, I'm going to be speaking with Pete, and we might actually be doing an earlier in the week broadcast because we have the Easter break next week. So the next Thursday, we will not be able to have Full Metal Attack on a normal slot. I'm going to be speaking with Pete, so you may be hearing us earlier in the week than normally expected. So for all of us here at WICR, this has been Full Metal Attack. I hope you all have enjoyed. I hope nobody turned off the audio in La Penta. So, I wish you all a good night, a good weekend. I bid you all adieu, and I hope to have you all listening to us next week, whenever it is we decide to air this broadcast. And then, of course, in subsequent weeks, we'll be having it at a normal time slot, 6:30 p.m., Thursdays, WICR. Go to Ustream.tv or download the Ustream app from your smartphone's app store and you'll be able to listen to WICR wherever you may travel. Again, for Pecan Sidori, who is not here tonight due to a special occasion over at Concordia College, I am Nick Grippo. Thank you all for listening, and good night.